They say your greatest power lies not in your past, but in your ability to rewrite it. But what happens when your past is all you've ever known, when it clings to you like a shadow, whispering you'll never be enough? Sarah had always been the quiet one, polite, obedient, invisible in a world that rewarded silence more than authenticity. From a young age, she learned to smile when she didn't feel like it, to stay quiet even when something inside her screamed to speak. She became a master of hiding. Emotions, opinions, needs all buried under layers of politeness. She gave and gave until she couldn't remember what it felt like to just be, to breathe without the weight of expectation. Everyone praised her strength, her composure, her independence, but no one saw how heavy it all was. They called her low maintenance, not realizing she was quietly falling apart. She said yes to everyone but herself, friends, coworkers, family, until her voice became a whisper, then an echo, and finally, silence. She wasn't living, she was performing. Her dreams became blurry, her desires inconvenient. She was always tired, yet always running, chasing approval, avoiding rejection, holding back tears behind a practiced smile. She feared taking up space, feared being misunderstood, feared what might happen if she showed her true self. So she stayed small, safe, unseen. But life doesn't let you hide forever. It finds ways to wake you up, even if it breaks you in the process. For Sarah, that breaking point came quietly and then all at once. She lost her job. A close friend betrayed her. Her father's health declined suddenly. The structure she had built so carefully, so perfectly, crumbled like paper in a storm. Alone in her apartment, she collapsed into herself. No more pretending. No more smiling. No more noise. Just her. And the aching emptiness she could no longer ignore. One rainy afternoon, she found herself in a quiet cafe with nothing but a pen, a journal, and a steaming cup of tea. She stared at the blank page, heart pounding. And then something cracked. She began to write, not for a blog, not for a post, not to be seen. She wrote for survival. Raw, unfiltered, trembling truths spilled from her hand like they had been waiting for years. She wrote about the fear of being herself, the exhaustion of pretending, the heartbreak of feeling invisible, even in crowded rooms. She wrote until her hand ached and her soul softened. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't poetic, but it was real, and in that realness, something inside her exhaled. For the first time, she felt seen, by herself. She went home that night different, not healed, but open, not fixed, but awake, and that was enough to begin again. In the days that followed, she kept writing, sometimes for hours, sometimes just one sentence, but she showed up every day for herself. She started taking slow walks without music, without distraction. She watched the way trees swayed, how sunlight filtered through clouds, how her breath moved in and out like a quiet promise. She deleted her social media apps, not out of rebellion, but out of reverence for her own peace. She chose solitude over noise, silence over scrolling. She started reading again stories, not strategies, poetry, not productivity. She remembered the girl who used to get lost in fiction, who once believed in magic and meaning. She began to listen to her body, to her rhythms, to her fatigue. She no longer pushed through pain. She began to honor it, sit with it, understand it. Some days were full of tears, grief she didn't know was still inside her. Other days were filled with soft laughter at nothing in particular. Both were healing. She started saying no, not aggressively, just clearly, calmly. She no longer explained herself to people who didn't care to understand. She began to rest, deeply, not as a reward for exhaustion, but as a birthright. She allowed herself to slow down, to feel, to exist. She let go of friendships that no longer felt aligned, not with resentment, but with quiet gratitude. She made space for people who saw her light, even when it flickered. She started therapy, even though it terrified her. She showed up trembling but honest, and each session peeled back another layer of her story she'd hidden away. She began to realize she wasn't broken. She was just buried under years of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and pressure. And now she was unearthing. One evening, she posted a short paragraph online, a tiny truth she had written in her journal. She didn't expect anyone to care, but the comments came. I feel this too. I thought I was alone. Thank you for writing what I couldn't say. And something in her shifted again. Her story, once soaked in shame, was becoming someone else's medicine. Her vulnerability became a bridge. She started creating again, not to perform, but to express. Painting, journaling, snapping pictures of sunlight through windows. She saw beauty again. In simple things. She stopped chasing transformation like a destination. Instead, she treated healing like a rhythm, a dance between release and return. She didn't wake up fearless, but she stopped letting fear sit in the driver's seat. She drove now, with shaky hands, maybe, but with her own direction. She still had hard days, but she no longer saw them as failures. She saw them as reminders that progress isn't perfect, and she was still moving. She stopped shrinking in rooms. She no longer apologized for her feelings, her voice, her truth. She stood softer but stronger. She found herself returning to the cafe again. Same table, same cup of tea, same notebook. But now, the words carried hope, not just hurt. Her story had shifted from fear to flourishing, not because the world changed, but because she finally allowed herself to. And if you're still listening, maybe some part of you is ready too. Maybe you've been carrying a story that's not even yours. Maybe it's time to put down the mask, to sit in silence, to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You don't need permission to begin again. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be honest and brave enough to write the next line. If this story touched your heart, if even one part of it felt like home, please like this video, share your truth in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the soul. Your story isn't finished. In fact, it's just beginning.